The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that made it hard to breathe. 8-year-old Maya sat on the cold wooden bench, her tiny hands clutching the hem of her dress. Her big brown eyes stayed locked on the tall man in a dark suit, the prosecutor. He spoke in a sharp, steady voice, pointing at her mother as if she were a criminal. Maya didn't understand all the big words he was saying, but she understood one thing. They thought her mother was guilty. She was seen leaving the store right after the robbery. The prosecutor said, his voice slicing through the room. The security footage shows a woman, matching her description, running away. The stolen items were later found near her apartment complex. The evidence is clear. Maya's heart pounded. She wanted to scream, to tell them they were wrong. But her mother had told her to stay quiet, to be strong. Maya turned to look at her mother, who sat in the defendant's chair. Her hands were folded in her lap, her face calm but tired. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her clothes were the same ones she had worn yesterday. Her mother had been in jail for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of cold food, no hugs, and no bedtime stories. Maya hated it, but what she hated more was the way people looked at her mother. Like she was a bad person, like she was a thief. But she wasn't. Her mother, Lisa Carter, was the kindest person Maya knew. She worked hard as a cleaner, scrubbing floors late into night, just so Maya could have food and a warm bed. She didn't steal. She would never steal. Maya felt her hands curl into fists. She had to do something. But what could a little girl do in a courtroom full of adults who had already made up their minds? It had happened on a Wednesday. Maya remembered because her mother always brought home a special treat on Wednesdays, a small cupcake from the bakery near her job. But that night, there was no cupcake. There was no mom. Instead, there was loud knocking on the door. When Maya opened it, she saw 2 police officers standing there. They asked for her mother. Maya, confused and scared, told them she was still at work. Then, 30 minutes later, her mother came home. Maya had never seen officers take someone away before, but that night, she watched as they put handcuffs on her mother's wrists. She ran to her, clutching her leg, crying, begging them not to take her. "Stay strong, baby," her mother whispered, tears in her own eyes. "I'll fix this. I promise." But Maya didn't understand how things could be fixed when everything was already broken. Chapter 3. The trial begins. Now, 2 weeks later, the trial was happening. Maya had been staying with a neighbor, Miss Joanne, but it wasn't the same. She wanted her mother. She wanted to go home. The prosecutor kept talking, showing blurry pictures from a security camera. They looked nothing like her mother, but everyone nodded like they made sense. Maya's stomach twisted when a woman took the stand. The store clerk. "I saw her," the woman said, pointing straight at Lisa. She was wearing a blue hoodie, just like the one in the footage. Maya wanted to scream. Yes, her mother had a blue hoodie, but lots of people did. That didn't mean anything. The defense lawyer, her mother's lawyer, stood up. He was a tall man with glasses, and he seemed nice, but he wasn't doing enough. "Did you see her face?" the lawyer asked. "Well, no, not exactly, but I remember the hoodie." Maya gritted her teeth. This wasn't fair. Nobody was listening. Then the lawyer looked at Lisa. "Do you have anything to say, Miss Carter?" Lisa stood up slowly. Her voice was soft but steady. "I was at work that night. I cleaned offices from 6 to midnight. I didn't rob that store." The prosecutor smirked. "No alibi. No witnesses." Maya's fingers dug into her dress. That was a lie. She knew where her mother was that night, and she knew how to prove it. Maya jumped up from her seat. "Wait!" she shouted. Everyone turned to look at her. The judge, an older woman with gray hair, frowned. "Young lady, you need to sit down." But Maya didn't sit down. She ran forward, her small body shaking, and pointed at her mother. "She was with me," Maya said. "I talked to her that night. I have proof." Gasps filled the room. The judge sighed. "Sweetheart, I know you love your mother, but..." Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out an old phone. Her mother's old phone. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. She pressed a few buttons and then held it up. "This is my mom's phone," she said. She called me at 9:17 that night. We talked for 5 minutes. She always calls me when she's on break. She looked at the lawyer. You can check the call log. It proves she was at work. The room went completely silent. Then the defense lawyer rushed forward, taking the phone. He pressed some buttons, his eyes widening. Then he turned to the judge. She's right, he said. There's a call made from the defendant's work phone to her daughter at exactly 9:17 p.m. That means she was at work during the robbery. The judge frowned. Why wasn't this brought up before? Lisa shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. I didn't know Maya still had my phone. I didn't remember making the call. The prosecutor's face turned pale. He shuffled his papers, looking lost. And then, for the first time since the trial started, Maya saw hope. The judge turned to Lisa. Miss Carter, based on this new evidence, I have no choice but to reconsider the charges. Maya held her breath. The judge looked at the prosecutor. Do you still wish to proceed? The prosecutor hesitated. Then he shook his head. No, Your Honor. The judge nodded. Then I declare Lisa Carter not guilty. The courtroom exploded with noise. Some people gasped. Others whispered. But Maya didn't hear any of it. She ran straight into her mother's arms, hugging her as tightly as she could. Lisa sank to her knees, holding Maya like she would never let go. Tears streamed down both their faces. I knew you didn't do it, Maya sobbed. I knew it. Lisa kissed the top of her head, her voice shaking. You saved me, baby. You saved me. Even the judge wiped away a tear. The defense lawyer cleared his throat, looking emotional. And the people in the audience? Many of them had tears in their eyes, too, because they had just witnessed something rare. A little girl, no older than 8, had stood up against a system that wanted to break her mother, and she had won. That night, for the first time in 2 weeks, Maya and her mother walked home together. The sky was dark, but the streetlights shined bright. Lisa held Maya's hand the whole way. When they got to their small apartment, Lisa sat Maya down on the couch. You were so brave, she whispered. I don't know what I would have done without you. Maya snuggled into her mother's arms. You don't have to worry anymore, Mama. You're home now. And for the first time in a long time, everything felt right again.